to date stalactites that had formed over the art. If we ensured that we took our samples from the stalactite where it clearly overlaid the art, the results would provide a minimum age for the underlying engraving, or in other words, a date that the art must have been created before. We were soon back in Churchhole and busy with a drill. Back then, it's not that long ago, but science moves quickly, we needed a relatively large sample, a circle of the stalactite roughly 3 centimetres, 1 inch across. When Alistair's results came through a month or so later, they showed that the stalactite had formed towards the end of the Ice Age, about 13,000 years ago. The art underneath must have been older. Several years passed. Alistair and I began directing archaeological excavations at Creswell Crags in order to understand more of the behaviour of the Ice Age artists who had left their indelible marks on Churchhole's walls. There was a lot of cave art out there in France and Spain too. That's how we came to spend so much time underground in 3 Spanish caves, painstakingly scraping stalactite off dozens of examples of Ice Age art. Our main intention was to refine what we knew about how the art had evolved, and how it changed in theme and style over the course of the last 25,000 years of the Ice Age. But things would turn out differently. Much of the art we dated fell within the expected range, from a couple of thousand back to over 25,000 years ago. But some of the results inspired Alistair to telephone me at home one late evening. Several samples, from all 3 of the caves we'd examined, had come out surprisingly old, much older than we'd expected. The results showed that the stalactites overlying art in La Pasiega Cave in the north of the country, Maltreviso Cave in the centre, and Ardalis in the south had formed around 65,000 years ago. In all cases, the art had to be more than 65,000 years old. The implications were profound. This doubled the age of Ice Age art overnight. But far more importantly, it showed that the art could not have been made by Homo sapiens. We have a good understanding of when members of our own species first arrived in Europe during the Ice Age. In Spain, as elsewhere, this occurred around 42,000 years ago. Even if the art we'd dated turned out to be 65,000 years old and not much older, it would have been created 23,000 years before Homo sapiens first arrived in Spain. It had to be the creation of another type of human, and in all probability, it was made by the Neanderthals. Thinking this through raised more questions. Were the Neanderthals the first to produce art? If so, we were wrong in thinking that it was unique to Homo sapiens. Was their art different? The examples we'd dated were all non-figurative, marks made by covering parts of the body with pigment and using them to colour the walls. Perhaps our sapiens ancestors can still lay claim to producing the first figurative art. But were they producing this art as they dispersed across the Europe and Asia for the first time, or did it come thousands of years later? What does this say about the cultural evolution of our own species? Introduction. Who are we? How do scientists define Homo sapiens, and how does our species differ from the extinct humans that came before us and those with whom we were contemporary as recently as 40,000 years ago? In evolutionary terms, we are a crazy experiment. We sacrificed some of the tough, muscular bodies inherited from our ancestors and came to rely more upon tools. We grew brains that are huge by primate standards and so expensive metabolically that we needed highly nutritious packages of food in the form of meat to power them if we went to graze all day long. Obtaining this meat required the regular hunting of large, dangerous animals, which in the days before rifles was very difficult and often resulted in painful injuries. Why do this? As we will see, the changes that define our brains probably required only a few genetic mutations, but these had a profound effect, resulting in a possibly unique mental world. There must have been good reasons for such an expensive change. We owe much to our Ice Age ancestors. Just to think of a few things common to modern life: sewing needles and tailored clothing, jewellery, burial of the dead, art, dogs, weapons, tents, lamps, and, as I shall show, villages, and even a form of writing. Archaeologists can't interrogate our distant ancestors directly. We're reliant